So those of you who want to come in, please come in. Those of you who want to go to the toilet first, it's a great time to go to the toilet right after the meditation, because the toilet cubicles will be free. I know what it feels like to not be able to go to the toilet after this morning's escapade. So, for the talk this evening, again, I kind of really enjoy seeing so many of you come here on a Friday evening. And because there's so many who come here, oh crikey, as soon as I say that, people decide to leave. Did I say that? Oh, I don't mind. This is all recorded and it's live streamed. And the whole job of me is just to be able to be generous to you. I was telling somebody recently today that I remember getting all these phone calls. One of those phone calls, which I got some time ago, was this an American lady who said, "Do you teach meditation?" I said, "Yes." "Are you any good?" And I think, fair enough, many people come and listen to my meditation classes, say, "Yeah, not bad." And then they ask me, "How much do I charge?" And that was the first time. And then because they asked me how much I charged, I said, "Nothing. It's for free." And she said, "Well, you can't be any good then." And that kind of made me feel sad. Why is it that these days, to be good, you have to be expensive? And I tried that once, not charging anything. But then one day, I was invited to go to give a speech at a human resources conference over in UK, in Docklands. They saw me give a talk on that subject over in Singapore, and whoever saw me really liked it. So they invited me to go all the way to UK to give a talk on human resources over, in a nice way, looking after people, caring for people over in UK. And they paid me a business class ticket and put me up in a hotel for a couple of days over in Docklands. They obviously valued me. But that's the only thing which I got from it, was just, the nice tickets and an aircraft and a couple of days in a hotel. But during the talk, the organizers said, "Excuse me, but there's somebody at the gate trying to get in for free." And they say they know you. So, what's his name, or what's their name? There's two of them. So one of them is called Tony Betts. "That's my brother." "Who's the other one?" The other one was Caroline Betts. She was my niece. And I sort of went to see them to check it was real, and I scolded them. I said, "Look, you're my brother, you're my niece, but nevertheless, you both got good jobs. My brother was a banker." And I said, "You can afford it." And then they said, "Do you know how much they're charging just to listen to you?" And that's got me interested. They were charging £90 per person for about an hour's talk. So, Mrs. President of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, for this talk this evening, how many people here? Times £90. I could be a multi-millionaire by now. But of course, I just thanked him for letting me know my market rate. So there's no way in the world I'd ever charge that. Because it doesn't seem right to me that you charge people for things. The whole idea of that makes no sense. Maybe I've been a monk for way too long. Everything I've ever learnt, I get for free. Even my food, I get for free. My accommodation, I build it, and sometimes the door handles are not really the best, but it's all for free. And there's something beautiful about that. Beautiful that you don't have to have any funds to come into this place. And it's also, we don't check that you're a Buddhist. We don't give you 5 precepts before you can come and listen to a talk. There's something wonderful about that. We often say, may all beings be happy and well. I've often taught you about a simple thing my father said to me, the door of my heart is open to you, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. And that's kind of beautiful when you have that degree of openness. Once there was, many years ago now, somebody came to the meditation after the Friday night talk, and at the 7:30, they just laid down over there somewhere. I still remember where they were. They laid down and they fell asleep. That's a kind of no problem. But she snored really loudly. And then the other people around her tried to, first of all, just nudge her. Wake up, you're making a noise. And then they did actually wake her up. And that was my talk that evening. I scolded everybody in a nice way. I said, that lady, you don't know why she's here. That she's a victim of domestic violence. And she's felt so tired, exhausted. It's the first time in weeks she's come to a place and felt safe. Because she felt safe, she lay down and wanted to go to sleep, automatically. And I said, please, next time, if anybody does that, you don't know what the cause is, why they want to go to sleep. Next time, see if you can get one of the caretakers to go to the monks' quarters, get a pillow and a blanket, and make them comfortable. See the beauty in that. Why is it that we tell people, no, you shouldn't do that, no, you shouldn't do this? That's not really nice. Instead, we're accepting and open, so that whatever happens to anybody, they never feel rejected. And I remember that's one of my favorite stories from the time of the Buddha. There was a woman in the time of the Buddha. She fell in love with a poor, much poorer person, and her family never gave her permission to get married. So she ran off with him. When she ran off with him, soon had her first child. And once she had her first child, she thought, well, no, now my parents, know this is a serious relationship, and maybe, having a grandchild, that was kind of melt the hearts of my parents. So she decided to go and visit her parents, but then thought maybe not yet. She got pregnant again and had a second child. And when the second child was about to be born, they thought, now is a time to reconcile with my parents. So together with her husband and her one child and a fat belly as well, they went to visit their mum and dad. And on the journey, that's where she gave birth to the second child. And her husband went to get some firewood to keep his wife warm. And when he collected some firewood, he didn't notice one of those sticks was not a stick of wood, it was a snake. and the snake bit her husband and killed him. In no way she could help him. And having bitten the husband, she had the 2 children, and one was just born, and the other one was a couple of years old. And they came to a stream which they had to cross, and it was flooded. So the wife said to the elder kid, "You wait here until I call you. I will go over the river with my young baby," which she did. And then she managed to get to the other side of the river. She put the baby down on the ground and then waited back to see her elder child. And then she noticed a noise. A young baby's kind of defenseless, and a big bird, an eagle, saw the young baby, swooped down, and all that the waving of her arms and the shouting did, it didn't scare off the eagle. The eagle took her baby, and took it away. And as she was waving, the elder kid thought, "Oh, my mother is now calling me to cross the river." So the elder kid waded into the river, could not withstand the power of the current, and got swept away. And that mother just saw her 2 children die that afternoon, and she could not save them. And so when she got to the other side, she thought at least she could see her parents and have a place to stay. So she went to the village where she grew up. When she got there, she found that because of a big rainstorm, which is why the river was flooded, that her parents' house had been crushed by a fallen tree. And she lost her 2 children at the same time. 2 parents at the same time. On the very same day, she lost her parents, her 2 children, and her husband. If you've ever experienced a death in your family, how hard is that? When 5 people die the same day. She lost her mind. She went crazy. What happened next was a wonderful part of this story. If you haven't heard this before, I'm sorry, but you should have many times, because it really inspires me. She wandered around the area where her father's village was, into this monastery where there was a monk giving a talk. The monk's name was the Buddha. When she went in there, she was so crazy. She had no clothes on. And she was a young woman, totally naked. What would you do if a beautiful young woman came into this hall right now? Would you say, "Get out of here. We've got good monks in here. We don't want people like you in here." Would you have done that? A couple of people tried. But when the Buddha saw this girl come in, he said, "No, let her come in. You're opening the door of your heart, no matter what you are like, no matter what you're doing." Even though she was so improperly dressed, one of the other monks who were there was kind enough to give her his robe, at least to put it around her shoulders. And the Buddha let her in, and everybody allowed her to come in. And as a result of that, she soon became a Buddhist nun. But the reason I like this story, not just any Buddhist nun, she became known as Patachara. she became the most inspiring meditation teacher. So much so that, you know Ayaseri, her hermitage where she lives, you know what she calls it? Patachara hermitage. After her, many hundreds of years later. And I was very impressed with that nun, Patachara. What happens when you've had such a huge amount of suffering? You know, you've lost all of your family the same day. What happened to her after she was given full ordination as a bhikkhuni? Apparently, according to her story, she was watching a candle flame. And as the wind blew that candle flame, the flame went out. And for her, that's all she needed to become fully enlightened. But not just an ordinary fully enlightened nun. This particular one, I kept on reading many times that in what's called the Therigatha, this is the verses of the enlightened bhikkhunis in those times of the Buddha. Please, this is not just a misogynist path. Doesn't matter who you are. Everyone is welcome. The door of our heart is open to everybody, no matter who you are. We have to mean that to say it. So Patachara became one of my favorite bhikkhunis, my favorite teachers when I was a very young monk. Because I started reading about all these stories of these nuns. And they said that they were meditating and trying their best, but they were getting nowhere. Have you ever had that feeling in your life? You're practicing meditation, but it's not working for you. You're trying to understand the Dhamma, but it's not just really powering you. And of course that was happening to many bhikkhunis a long time ago. And then they kept on saying in the verses of enlightenment, yeah, I was practicing, but nothing was working. And then this nun came along, taught me, and in a week or two I was fully enlightened. When I heard that the first time, and then the second time another bhikkhuni had the same experience, then another and another. Who the heck is this teacher? And actually then when you saw, that was Patachara. She was absolutely brilliant. That's one of the reasons why, you know, I say all these stories. When you have any suffering in your life, I mean really big suffering, it's amazing how that can be so amazing and useful for you. It's hard for me to say this, because it means that we should all just, you know, have these terrible experiences. You don't have to wish for it, it happens in life. If it does happen, I try to make it so you can understand what's happening. It's like treading in the dog shit. How many times have you done that in your life? And when you do you complain? Please don't complain. Instead, take it back home, dig it under the mango tree, and then your mangoes will be more delicious than ever before. That's one of the reasons why. The way we judge and name things, we don't see their value. I've said that so many times before. What would happen if, you know, people valued some of the great fertilizers of life? And this is what the fertilizers are. Each one of you, every one of you, without needing to read your minds, how much pain and suffering have you had? How many difficulties? And often the time is we say, why? Why me? Why it keeps on happening? Instead of ever saying why, Say, what am I going to do with it? Please dig it in. And when you dig it in, it's a hard teaching to tell you. But my goodness, it works. Somehow in my life, I must have had a lot of dog shit. Because many people come and listen to these weird stories I keep telling. And I get inspired by them. And you can fill halls. Why? Where did your wisdom come from? And I can tell you, it doesn't come from studying at university. Yeah, I did go to university, but I was studying math and theoretical physics, not Buddhism. Totally different sort of realm of existence. But all the Buddhism which I learnt, that was from life. And that was from people like, great teachers like Ajahn Brahm telling me, look, you don't learn from thinking. You learn from feeling. How does it feel when you're really sick? It always happens at the wrong time. Even like this morning, a small thing, but it was fascinating for me. How does it feel? You know, to be locked in a place you never thought you'd be locked in my cave, because the handle of the door wouldn't work and there's no way to get out. It kind of felt fascinating, not suffering. I was actually quite happy in the cave, but not being able to go to the toilet. That wasn't very pleasant, I must admit. But you can bear with it. And somebody came to help. How does it feel to actually to fall over and break a leg? How does it feel even to get bitten by a snake? How many of you have ever been bitten by a snake? When I was staying in Thailand, no one in our monastery ever got bitten by a snake while I was there. But I think the year after I left and came here to Australia, there was a Singaporean monk who came to stay in northeast Thailand. And one day, apparently, he came into our library in Wat Banana Chat and just said, oh, can I please have a look at the snake book? It has all the different species of snake in that part of Thailand, and also describes how venomous they are. And as he was given the snake book, the librarian was just not really paying too much attention. And the Singaporean monk was looking through the books, and then, oh my goodness, that's the one which just bit me. That's why the Singaporean was looking at the book of snakes, to try and identify the one which had just bitten him, to see whether it was dangerous or not. And it was really dangerous. So the other monk looked at the poor Singaporean monk's leg, saw the bite marks, the two fang marks, and saw it already starting to swell. And that's one time, if you're a monk, you're allowed to run. You're supposed to run. You know, if any one of you got bitten by a snake, and it was me, I would have to run. Even though that might kill me, nevertheless, you know, just to save another person's life, that's so important. So this monk just ran into the village to get a doctor. Now, these snakes exist in Thailand, so you have to keep some anti-venom, but this village had no anti-venom. They'd thrown it away years ago, because when this monk came back with one of the villagers on a little motorbike, he didn't come back with a doctor. Well, it was a kind of a doctor, what you usually call like a witch doctor. A poor villager who didn't have any injections. he had this special medicine, a herbal medicine, which was supposed to be really, really powerful. And the herbal medicine man started doing some chanting, and he put this medicine in his mouth, started chewing it, mixing it with saliva, and then spitting it on this poor Singaporean man's wound, which was getting really big by now. And this Singaporean, imagine that was you, how would you feel? This Singaporean, who was highly educated, looked at the other monks and said, "Can I please have a proper doctor?" But then, looking at this Singaporean and this witch doctor doing chanting and spitting over the wound, you could see apparently what the other monks told me. The two fang marks started to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And the inflammation got less and less and less, until the inflammation totally vanished. The two fang marks disappeared. And that Singaporean monk was totally healed. I didn't see that myself, but I know the villagers over there. And those villagers, they once told me, we've given up our anti-venom because this medicine man is much more powerful. And there's no sort of bad side effects afterwards. These are really weird things which sometimes you see in yourself. And so because you've seen them, there's some of the belief systems which we have. It's not that we just have to be really just believing in anything. When you see it, and it happens, it kind of makes this life much more wonderful. Full of wonder, things you never expect actually happen. And there's too many of those things I've seen for myself in my life, and I love it when those things happen. Just in my last week I was talking about the relics, because I did go to the relic exhibition and it was highly successful. And mostly very nice to see the Bhutanese community come out, and just so many of them. I only was there for the first morning, but afterwards apparently there were the same crowds every day for 2 days. 15,000. They take the day off, and the weather was really hot. So I was really quite surprised. But when that kind of thing happens, sometimes you ask why. And sometimes you ask why, and it's just, I love it when it's the unexpected happens. And it makes this world a much more beautiful place. All the unexpected things which you've enjoyed in your life. Things which shouldn't have happened, but they did. Those are the sorts of things which I really enjoy in life. Seeing people recover from diseases they're not supposed to recover from. People do well in exams, which they're not supposed to do well in. So many times I've done chanting. Is chanting good? Once there was a Malaysian girl. They asked for some chanting before the end of the year exams. And if you ask, I would always give. You give to me, I can't not say no. So I did her some chanting. Then afterwards, I never saw her again. But I saw some of her friends. Some of her friends came to see me. They said, I just thought we'd let you know, that girl you chanted on is going around telling everybody you're a bad monk. You don't know you're chanting. And of course you know why. Because she failed. But they told me it would have been a miracle if she'd have actually passed, simply because, she'd done no work all year. First time away from home, When she comes to Perth, she's a party girl. And I've not done any work at all. And she said it was your fault. Okay, she understood that when she comes overseas, she'd enjoy her life and let the monk look after the other side of life, like exams. But nevertheless, it's wonderful to being able to help in whichever way you possibly can. She learnt her lesson, but it was not the end of the world for her. So it's beautiful when we can see how to deal with the difficulties which we have in life. We can never expect life to be perfect. We can expect life to be how we learn. And after a while, you find how to have happiness no matter where you are, no matter what happens to you. And that's the thing which I kind of love to try and make happen. Even today, went to a dana this morning, and the kids were making such a loud noise. They were playing together. And I told one of the parents, told the kids, be quiet, there are monks here. You know what I said? No, make more noise, please. The kids were enjoying themselves and seeing the happiness which they were practicing. It was actually made me very happy. Would you rather see kids just sitting down, afraid, but quiet? Or would you rather see kids, 10, 11, 12 years of age, messing around, enjoying themselves? Which would you prefer? This is actually how you understand people learn. People of the age of people here, you understand things, you think, through thinking, through logic. And sometimes we believe in that too much. The weird stuff of life, we don't investigate enough. The things which shouldn't happen, but which do happen. What is really important in your life? When you say like love and kindness, what moves you more than anything else? What has the power in this life to heal, to help, unite people? That's not just logic. Sometimes I don't have the brain to be able to explain how this body works. But sometimes you know how it works, you feel it, you understand it. What was that? Because as I look at you, I remember one of the things which I taught you some years ago. But it came from when there was a disciple over in Adelaide University who had anxiety disorder. So strong anxiety disorder she could not get out of bed. Every time she felt like she was strong enough, got out of bed and just cracked up. Had a big anxiety attack. So she decided to try and get the doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists. Nothing worked. And that's when, because her father was a key member of our Buddhist society in Western Australia here, he said, go and give Ajahn Brahm a call. One of the nice things, I shouldn't say this, but I've already started. One of the nice things about giving Ajahn Brahm a call is I'm cheap. It don't cost anything if you can get through. So anyway, she called, and I didn't have much time, but she was really smart. She was studying dentistry over in Adelaide University. So I asked her, when you have an anxiety attack, how does it feel? It kind of hurts. And that's not what I said. How does it feel? I want a real explanation. Please give me a call back in 3 days when you can describe exactly how it feels. It gave her something to do. It gave her control over her anxiety attacks. In 3 days' time, she called me and gave an amazing description. When you have an anxiety attack, what those feelings in the feelings actually feel like. And then I asked her a second question. When you have that anxiety attack, where do you feel it? And that's what she said, and in my chest. Not good enough. I want exact. You're a science student, dentistry I suppose, but from your belly button, I want millimeters up. How far does it extend? And to the left, to the right? Is it like a circle or a triangle? What exactly when you feel it? Where do you feel it on your body? Describe it to me. Give me a call back in 3 days. And that's what she did. After 6 days, she gave me this incredible description of what it's like to have an anxiety attack and how it grows and moves during that attack. That's what we call mindfulness. And then more than that, I said, next, I want you. She had this live-in boyfriend, Lloyd his name was. I hope they're listening to this because they now come to live in Perth. Lloyd. And the boyfriend was looking after her, cooking for her, cleaning for her, because she couldn't do anything herself for this period. And said, once you feel that anxiety attack, get your hand, put it on your chest, and massage your chest with love, with kindness, as much kindness as you can possibly generate. And if you can't do it, ask your boyfriend Lloyd to do it for you. I don't think he would object. To rub his girlfriend's tummy. But with kindness, he really cared for her. And then give me a call in 3 days' time and see what happened. And that's what they did. 3 days' time, she called back again and said, what happened? I said, it really helped. Because once I had that feeling in my tummy of the anxiety disorder, what I call the physical manifestations of the mental problem. The feelings in the tummy disappeared. And then I couldn't resist asking her, what happened when the physical manifestation of anxiety disappeared? What happened to the anxiety? And that's when we had the Einstein, or the Eureka moment. You know what that Eureka moment is? You ask the correct question, and someone gets it. She pauses. She said, it vanished. Even the anxiety vanished. I said, great. Now you know what to do. 9 days of teaching. That's all. Just maybe half an hour every 3 days. And then she was soon out of the bed. And I don't mind saying this. It never worked. But she did nominate me for Australian of the Year. There's other people who do more work than I do. But nevertheless, she didn't get the Australian of the Year nomination through. But she insisted about a year later. She said, I'm totally recovered now, no more anxiety. She passed her degrees at university. And she said that, can you please make I want to make a reservation for this day. So I insist, please, can you please officiate for our marriage with Lloyd? As the UWA Sunken Gardens. So that's where I married them. Lloyd and Chippy. And now they've got a dentistry down in Florida somewhere, which is very nice. It worked. It's not supposed to work. But it did. I know another doctor who did the same thing. Remember you telling me this. It's okay if I say this? That she said she had some patients over in one of the big hospitals here. One of these old people there had such bad anxiety, they had to have oxygen all the time. And so, as a doctor, you give one medication after another. And you got to the last medication, nothing was working. And that's when, very busy, had to go off back home. And then you taught her Ajahn Brahm's medication. Feel the anxiety, how it manifests on your body. Massage it with kindness. See what happens. Because she didn't live there in the hospital, when she went back the next day, that patient had the oxygen feed off. She said, "Oh, thank you very much, it worked. I'm going home now." Was that pretty accurate? Yeah, okay, she said, yeah, good. So this is amazing. These are sometimes what you learn as a Buddhist monk, and how powerful it can be. So for each one of you, if you have anxiety disorder, please know how to deal with it. It will manifest somewhere on your body. Take your hand and massage it. If you can't do it, get your partner to massage it. And see it all disappear. Even do that before you go to an exam. If you're a young person, you're going to do some exams at university. Do you feel tense before you go in? If you feel tense before you go into that exam, see how many people you see there going into that exam, rubbing their tummies. If you see that, you know who taught them that. I confess. It works. Which means you can pass exams, don't get nervous, and you can have much more fun in life. Why not? So anyway, that's my little talk for you today. I should have been really nervous today. I had a very bad sore throat. Where did that go? I haven't got a clue. Maybe I've been rubbing it too much. In the monks' quarters, did you hear me coughing? Okay, yeah. Anyway, it's amazing. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Now, questions. Yeah. Please excuse me, I'm doing this on purpose to try and to lessen the length of the talks. I'm sorry I'm not training you in how to hold your bladder, but I don't think that's a nice thing to have to train people doing. But I do notice that apparently people like the shorter talks more. So I'm trying my best. If you like longer talks, let me know. But anyway, your question. Have we got a microphone? Question over here. Over here. Yep. Okay. Uh-oh. While we're waiting, we do need very good volunteers who are very fast and very fit to be able to take the phones.
First, thank you so much, Ajahn, for your kindness. My question is, back to your story, bhikkhunis. So, what I have read the book, I heard that when venerable become enlightenment, they can see in the past life. So, continue this story. She have lost her family of 5 people. So, after she have enlightenment, did she see in her past what consequences, what karma had made her to that story, and then how she have so much suffer in her life and losing 5 people. Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay. I don't know if I never read the story that deeply to see what karma she had in her past life. But she would never look at it as being negative anymore, simply because that allowed her to see so deeply into the nature of life. She was now fully enlightened. What did give her this authenticity? When a person becomes wise, they don't make things up. Sometimes people had a huge amount of suffering and difficulties in their life, but they get through that, and it makes their life so much more powerful to be able to teach others. That's what I say when you get lots and lots of fertilizer. Your tree is so powerful that you can teach so deeply. It makes sense because you've been there and felt the pain of life. And so other people, as I mentioned, each one of you, I'm sure you've had great disappointments and difficulties in life. But you find this way through that. And not just a way through it. You get a more delicious mangoes from your tree than anybody else. That kind of is weird. The people I've known who've been the wisest have had the most suffering. Does that make any sense? Okay, thank you.
Ajahn, can you tell us the story of this beautiful
Buddhist
Rupa? I feel like I'm looking at Patachara, an emanation of Patachara. It's so feminine.
Yeah.
So what's the story with that?
The story of that is that one of the supporters had in her, I think, house, and they wanted to give it to the BSWA, and it's just wondering where to give it. So first of all, it came last week, and we put it in the corner over here so people could see. A really good Buddha statue is not masculine nor feminine. It's in between. It's not identifying with any gender, but just that kindness which unites people. That one is a Burmese Buddha statue, and they have their Buddha statues in that way. And sometimes you manage to get a really beautiful one. And I think I've mentioned to all of you here before that there's one Buddha statue which I always was inspired by, which was in the, it's kind of like it's in a museum. It's run by the Indian Archaeological Survey, and that's outside of Benares, in a museum next to Sarnath. When I first saw that, I burst out crying. Sometimes people say, "Oh, you're monks, you're not supposed to cry." No, that's tears of joy. There's so many times tears of inspiration and joy we're supposed to do. I was embarrassed at first because I didn't understand that so much. If it's tears of joy, please go for it. So that first time I saw that Buddha statue in Sarnath, it's called the Dhammaloka Buddha statue. It's got the big wheel behind it. And I don't know why, it's the most beautiful one I've ever seen. And so once I saw it once, the next time I took people on a pilgrimage to India, this time I came prepared. Had a big pack of tissue paper. And I told people, this is why I got the tissue paper. Just round the corner we're going to see this Dhammaloka Buddha statue, and every time it brings me to tears. Just its artistic beauty as well as what it means. And so when I turned around, I started to cry. This time I was not embarrassed about crying. It was a wonderful feeling. And the third time when I went to that museum, I had even more tissues in my pocket I was looking forward to having a good weep. There's something really beautiful, which does literally bring tears to your eyes. And when I went round the corner, they were doing renovations. Had a big tarpaulin over the most beautiful Buddha statue in the world. And straight away, I could not see my Buddha statue. And then the workers there, I can't speak Hindi, and they don't understand English. I never said a word anyway, but I saw the guy in charge looking at me. And then straight away, he took the tarpaulin off, so I could see the Buddha statue again. And so I wept again. These were tears of joy. Have you ever experienced that? Something very, very beautiful. Something which inspires you. Something which looks absolutely amazing. Some of the generosity, the kindness of human beings. What was it that one of the monks over in Sri Lanka, he was a blood donor. So he got a call from the blood clinic, and they said, I know you're a blood donor, but also you've volunteered if there's any of your organs which are needed to help a person survive any cancers or anything, that you're very happy to help them. We found a candidate, it's a perfect match for you. They will need your, I don't know, it's kidney or liver or something. But the problem is, said the blood clinic, said the person who needs your organ is a fundamentalist Christian who goes around Sri Lanka converting Buddhists to being Christians. Any problem? What should a Buddhist monk say? He said, no problem at all. I'll be in when you want me. So he donated his, I think, was it a kidney or was it a liver? You know that one? But anyway, he donated it without any question. And straight afterwards, they thought, that's kind of something which religions should do. It doesn't matter sort of what faith you are, what you're doing. If you need something and you're willing to give it, you give it. The door of your heart's open to everybody. And so then he went, as soon as he recovered from the surgery, he went off into the forest for a while, because the newspapers were all after him. They were inspired. That's one thing which made a lot of sense, that people go way beyond religions. If somebody needs it for health, I don't care who you are, you can have my kidney. So those are kind of the stories which I'm inspired by in life. Not just my mob, anybody who needs it, very happy to help. That makes sense? Anyway, I was really inspired by that monk. Okay, next question. You know that sometimes people think the Buddhists are not fit. But you know I mentioned this fellow today, one of the most famous Buddhists. I don't know if he calls himself a Buddhist, but he's certainly a meditator. He was in the news recently. He plays at Wimbledon, Novak Djokovic. You know why I know this? He's a Wimbledon champion. How many times? Many times. But apparently, when they have the competition at Wimbledon, he's a well-known visitor to the Thai temple in Wimbledon. He doesn't sort of create any disturbance for the monks. You know, another thing the monks actually do there, they've got a big property there So they open up their car park, which is really close by to the Wimbledon tennis club. It's so hard for visitors to get places to park their cars. So that's where the Thai monastery makes a bit of cash to pay off their bills, to open it up during the the Wimbledon Tennis Championship. But also one of the visitors there goes round the back is Novak. If you're going to be competing at such a deep level, of course you want to have to be able to relax. So he goes round the back of the Wimbledon temple to meditate. And I think that's one of the reasons why he does so well. So, if any of you want to do well at tennis, okay. Next question.
Yes, thank you, Ajahn Brahm, for
yeah.
many years ago you taught something about pain, dealing with pain, and that was very helpful when I cut my eye and I had no other choice. So thank you for that. My question is to do with cognitive dissonance, and at the risk of getting trolled again online from asking a previous question a few years ago when some people were quite nasty. The Buddhist precepts essentially tell us to be compassionate to all beings.
Yes.
And yet in our conservative treatment of all beings on this planet, we torture and kill a lot of them unnecessarily. And how do you think is the best way for us to cognitively get past that so that we can actually stop funding the torture and killing of other beings on this planet, so that we can actually live truly Buddhist and compassionate?
It's that way to do the very best you can personally. One of the reasons why this happens is, I think it's because of the commercialism of everything. That's one of the reasons why here I refuse to have an entry fee, refuse to charge for things. That's why over in Ajahn Grove Retreat Center, for a long time now, people just wanted it. We should charge for things. It costs a lot of money to maintain Jhana Grove. We keep on refusing. If you want to go on a retreat at Jhana Grove, you just put your name down. We do what we call a booking bond. This is not just lying words. To actually, I forget how much it is now. Sort of, if it's like $100 or something for a 9-day retreat, and then that is given back to you after the retreat. The only reason we do that, because otherwise, when it was for free, so many people put their names down and never turn up. So they'd have to turn up, but if they needed it back, straight away, give them back. To try and take the money away from things, that causes most of the difficulties. And that's the same way with other things in this life. Many years ago, somebody, they were over in Thailand, they were Westerner, and they say, look, I've got a bit of extra money, can I make a donation? And I think it was, well, to the Buddhist Society, I forget exactly what it was for, about $5,000. And then they wrote again and said, look, I've come into some financial problems. Can I have the $5,000 back? And I remember at the time that I wanted to check the people who are on my committee, the presidents and the treasurers. I wanted to check them out, how much Buddhism had they really understood. So I asked them, can we please give it back? And then the conversation at the committee, before your time, the conversation of the committee was, well, I think that might be illegal. That's wrong. They're given the money, so you can't give it back again. And then blah, blah, blah. And then on the end, well, yeah, I know, but, we're the Buddhist society. If we can't be compassionate, who can? So it was given back. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's important. People count more than money. Animals too. All beings. I think one of the biggest problems is, again, funds and, trying to do the right thing so we won't be sued. That makes sense? I was going to say, the only other things is lawyers. Sometimes we've got treasurers, they're doing their very best. We just want to make sure that everything is done properly. But properly means being kind. If we take away the money thing, it changes the whole way of working. Was I clear enough about that? Okay. Anyway, may, as long as I'm alive, you never have to pay a cent to come in here. Or even go to Jhana Grove. You may ask to put in a booking donation, but it's yours to get back afterwards. Make sense? Excellent, okay. Okay, do you want the questions online? Okay, imagine you're Novak Djokovic. First. Excellent. From Germany, what is the difference between nature and the mind? How do they relate to each other? Nature part of the mind or vice versa? Both can influence each other, can they? I think, to me, the mind is the biggest thing. I mean, what is nature anyway? Nature is like a cause and effect, which doesn't just affect beings or plants or anything else, which is what we call life. It's, what's around life, what's inside of life. So the mind is more powerful than anything. That's why I know so many examples where we may learn nature, but then do we really understand it? The mind is much more powerful than anything else. That can be a whole talk on that. From Bangkok, when I meditate, I feel bored. Should I keep on meditation or should I stop? Please keep on meditating. But then check your posture. Have a smile on your face. If it's real meditation, you never feel bored. I never feel bored. I've learned over so many years of meditating to see the joy and the happiness in it, which is immense. Where do you get your joy and happiness from? I got mine mostly, from the meditation. Nothing like it. Which has a positive effect on the health and everything else. Lastly, from Indonesia. Dear Ajahn Donut. That's my nickname in Indonesia. Why do they call me Ajahn Donut in Indonesia? Sweet, that's first. Round. And holy. And I'm really happy that I've got a nickname like that. Because number one, it takes away the arrogance of religious leaders. How many other religious leaders can you call donut? It's kind of, it means I'm part of you, not sort of senior to you or more than you. It's like a family term. You're like a donut. I love those little nicknames. The other things which they give me, the nickname they give me over in Indonesia, is Guru Cacing. You know the word guru, that's like teacher. What's the word Cacing mean in Indonesian and in Bahasa? It's worm. The teacher of the worms. And they're all my worms. Because that was the story. Sorry, I shouldn't tell so many stories late at night, but nevertheless, the story of the worm in the pile of dung. The story goes, if you haven't heard it for a while, there were two monks, the best of friends, and when they died, one went to a beautiful heaven realm. He was a good monk. The other one was not such a good monk. So he got reborn as a worm in a pile of cow poo. Is that a good rebirth? As a worm in a pile of cow shit. So the monk who got reborn in the heaven realm, after enjoying heaven for a while, he decided, where's my best friend gone? We were monks together before. He's not in heaven. He searched all the heavens, couldn't find him. So then started, the human realm. The human realm's a good realm. So he looked all through the human realm, couldn't find his friend there either. Oh my goodness, hasn't been reborn as an animal, has he? And then looked all the animal realms, couldn't find him there either. Where's my friend gone? And after a lot of searching, he found his best friend. They'd been mates together for such a long time, had been reborn as a worm in a pile of cow poo. That's not a good rebirth. So the heavenly being decided to help his friend. Wouldn't you do the same if that was, one of your friends? And you go and help her or him, whoever it is. So anyway, found the pile of cow poo, and then stood outside and said, "Hey, worm, worm, worm." And called the worm, and the worm poked its head out of the pile of cow poo and said, "We were friends together in our previous existence. Now for some reason you've been reborn in this dirty pile of cow poo. I've been reborn in the heaven realm. I can come and take you with me to rescue you from this pile of cow poo. Do you want to come?" And that's when the worm said, "Look, first of all, is there any cow poo up in this heaven place which you say?" "Of course not, none." "Well, if there's no cow poo up there, I'm not going. I like my cow poo. It's my food, and it's my home. It's warm and fragrant." That's what a worm feels. And so, "No, I'm not going." And so he refused the offer, and then the heavenly being thought, look, this little worm has never seen heaven before. All it knows is cow poo. If I could take it up to heaven just for a visit so it can see, it will soon know the heaven realm is much superior than a pile of cow poo. So look, let me take you just for a visit. And the worm said no. So the heavenly being tried to grab the worm and take it up by force. And the worm didn't want to go. So what did the worm do? It writhed and squirmed, and because it was all covered with slippery cow poo, the worm soon escaped. But friends don't give up on each other that easily. So the worm, he's from a heaven realm. Sometimes I try and describe it. Imagine it's like some not a heavenly being. So it's like Queen Elizabeth, putting her hands in a pile of cow poo. Would she do that? Of course she would if it was for a friend. So this heavenly being put his hand in the cow poo to try and pull the worm out. And the worm, each time it realized what was happening, started to scream out, leave me alone, I don't want to go, help, I'm being worm-napped. And because the worm never wanted to go, and always was wriggling, was very slimy, he escaped every time. And in the end, out of 108 times of trying to escape, the heavenly being had to give up. And the heavenly being went up to heaven and left the worm to the cow poo. And that was the last story of the 108 stories which I told in opening the door of your heart. And it proved that they read every story. The disciples in Indonesia gave me the unforgettable nickname, the Guru Chaching, the teacher of the worms. That's what I'm known as over there. I like nicknames. So anyway. Oh, and there's 4 questions. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. A question from Bolivia. I like to call the precepts training rules, because thus it's easier to forgive me if I break them. Great. But what is the actual training? To be perfect in virtue, always forgive mistakes. Always forgive mistakes. And then the virtue becomes perfect by itself. The training is what you do, is to forgive. Can you do that to your partner? Forgive them. But be careful, because sometimes people have a partner who's very dangerous. So I always say, forgive with, like one person did, they gave their partner parole. I will forgive you as long as if after a year you actually change your behavior. But the forgiveness, sometimes it always has to be there eventually. But the other person has to earn that forgiveness. So I always call that giving them parole. Okay. Can we finish now? Excellent. Okay, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I've got to go and take a rest, so I go back to my part of... No, I don't. Okay, so about 3 times, and anyone wants to ask a question, please come up. I'll just bow.